A fair-haired young man stood on a narrow street in a medieval town, thinking about how he had suddenly found himself in a new world thanks to reincarnation, when a local story caught his attention. Zin animatedly described the wonders of this land to his companion, listing flying dragons, brave adventurers, and fairy tale-like magic, after which they continued on their way. Later, Zin walked through a bright world as if created from a childhood dream, realizing that his second life had begun, although he sensed some unsolved mystery ahead. At the same time, Alan, not knowing what a bathhouse was, held a stack of towels and chewed tough meat with crumbling bread with annoyance, realizing the inconvenience of the local cuisine. Then he saw a container of cleaning slime and realized that even everyday tasks in this place were much more difficult than they seemed at first glance. Later, raising a lantern, he noted the lack of electricity and decided that civilization here had stagnated at the level of the late Middle Ages when someone knocked outside holding a shining blade. Lying on his bed, he thought about the former comfort of his old life and realized that he wanted to live in a world that really suited him. A sudden flash of light and a puff of smoke caused him to fall to the floor, where he saw a glowing passage into an unknown space in front of him. Remembering the Moongate ability, he realized that it was this ability that allowed him to travel between worlds, from prehistoric lands with dinosaurs to a future that resembled science fiction. Meanwhile, Zin, seeing the new location, was surprised and wondered if it reminded him of Japan in his memory. Hearing the familiar address, he turned around and realized that more than 10 years had passed and it was almost impossible to go back. At that moment, an elderly man in a hat asked the young man if he had missed the bus, inquiring why it was delayed there. The man later asked Alan if he was okay, after which he was served a bowl of noodles and then invited to have lunch together. Alan admitted that he hadn't eaten soba in a long time, and Albert praised his manner of speaking and appearance, only pointing out the correct way to eat noodles. After this, Alan began to think about how words have an unusual way of connecting different worlds, and decided to regularly travel between Japan and other places. Then he realized that only he could pass through the Moongate. Living beings got stuck, but inanimate things crossed the border without hindrance. Reflecting on the possibilities, he came to the conclusion that the ability, if used correctly, could bring significant benefits. Clenching his fist, Zin decided to take advantage of his advantage, noting how uncomfortable it was to live in Asfial without any extra funds, not even having enough money for a bathhouse. He then compared the value of gold. In Japan, 1 bar is enough to build a mansion, while here it is only a month's salary. And finally, he came to the conclusion that reselling Japanese things could make him wealthy, because a cake costs as much as a house, and spices and sweets are considered a luxury. Alan politely declined, although the elderly woman explained that almost everyone in the village was elderly and any help was important, after which the grateful neighbor continued to tend the beds. Then he was surprised and confirmed his consent too hastily, and Albert asked if he really loved sweets, but Alan assured him that he had to thank him, because that way he would be able to buy even more delicacies. After this, the traveler noted that he could not reveal whether he was selling goods in another world, said goodbye and headed away, and Albert, smiling warmly, suggested that they get down to business as soon as possible. The salesman then asked Alan with concern where he got the item he was holding in his hands. After a brief pause, he listened as Alan asked if such items could be sold to the aristocracy, and the traveler explained that many would be fascinated, while Albert admitted his lack of connections but hinted that he knew the right person. The shopkeeper then warned that trading with the nobles would attract too much attention, but Alan stood his ground, and Albert reminded him that the merchants would not appreciate such competition either. He later explained that merchants typically hired managers for farmers and confectioners, while nobles used sweets as a diplomatic tool to demonstrate status, which Alan acknowledged was reasonable. After this, Albert complained about the tiny shop and asked if the guest would take care of the business himself, but he sharply ordered him to shut up, while simultaneously admitting that he was right. Then Zin sighed, noting that an ordinary merchant was no rival to the nobility, apologized and said that he would try to look for options elsewhere, and Albert just nodded. When Alan turned around, he noted that his interlocutor was indeed unusual, and Zin, perked up, declared that there were plenty of other options besides sweets. Meanwhile, the girl greeted them both cheerfully and asked only for their opinions, while Alan concentrated and Albert listened attentively. Then the boy greeted 2 customers, surprised by the chance meeting, and one of them showed the overseas sweet close-up, explaining that he had stumbled upon it by accident. Alan admitted that he was attracted to the trade, but Albert was surprised and assured that he had not even started working as a merchant yet. After this, Albert emphasized that it was none of his business, but Alan pointed out that this was precisely the reason the shop wasn't growing, adding that he was grateful but worried. Then Zin suggested letting others try, and Ina cautiously asked for permission. Soon Alan and Albert were praising the crispy fried octopus, each deciding to buy another piece, while the two girls were excitedly preparing to take their first bite. Alan was then surprised to hear someone sincerely wish him luck, and the two women thanked each other for the treat, promising to tell the other mothers about it. After this, he noticed with surprise and slight concern that all the goods were completely sold out. Then Albert advised not to underestimate trade, and Alan jokingly said that with chocolate he would become a billionaire, while Zin thanked the local mothers and clarified that the product turned out to be quite good. Alan looked serious at first, but then extended his hand when Zin thanked him for the day and offered the rest of the chocolate as thanks. Afterwards, Albert watched Alan walk confidently down the street and wondered if there was a real talent for salesmanship hidden behind him. With the steam rising from the tranquil mountains as a backdrop, Alan relaxed in a hot spring, reflecting on how long it had been since he'd felt the warmth of water and lamenting his lack of registration, stable employment, and money. Then Zin, watching him with a soft smile, thought that there was still a glimmer of hope in what was happening. After this, the girl with two ponytails discussed how Japanese things could be used in another world, and two interlocutors listened to her confession that you can't get rich quickly with sweets alone. Meanwhile, Alan pondered the complex rules of local trade, wondering what to sell next and how, realizing that many questions remained. Later, finding himself in a noisy tavern, he enjoyed a drink, considering the local beer to be the best, and feeling that after a bathhouse, a glass of booze turns the day into a real holiday. Soon he noticed a sudden silence, wondered what was happening, and heard the ringing of a bell as the three visitors turned towards the door. Then a girl with cat ears appeared, causing whispers about the Black Princess, and the young man explained that she was a migrant from Japan, surprising those who did not expect her to appear in this village. The narrator noted that in this world there are many unusual people like the speaker, and even in this settlement there are those who are called reincarnated for their memories of their previous life. After this, the girl with a long ribbon in her hair said that those who were suddenly transported here are called transported. Then it was explained that those who were reincarnated and transferred often possessed outstanding physical strength, magical properties, and exceptional skills, and therefore often became adventurers or explorers. Then Alan noted that it was the first time he had seen such a group in person, and Albert, admiring the attractive woman, asked if the others knew her. In the moonlight, the confident warrior introduced the captain of the all-female Dawn Moon Squad, praising her brilliant skill and numerous victories over the most powerful monsters. He took a slow sip and noted that such people were among the trusted nobles and merchants, and admitted that it was a little unsettling to see them here. The bartender asked if he was already going home, since it rarely happens that he drinks only one glass, while the man with the tail asked for the bill. After this, Zin good-naturedly replied that he was simply dealing with some matters. Then someone's hand held a page of manga with an image of schoolchildren, and a voice wondered if this story was popular now. Kita happily told Albert that manga was topping the charts in Weekly Shonen Jump, and Albert admitted that he didn't follow trends, while Alan was happy that Albert also liked manga. Albert then asked if it was the right women's fashion magazine, and Alan confirmed it, explaining that the woman he knew had asked him for a favor. Albert, holding the books, invited them to come again, and the rest decided to pay for their purchases and look through other publications at the same time. Meanwhile, Alan pondered the risk of dealing with the Black Princess and noted that, unlike him, she had been suddenly transported to another world, hoping that he had guessed correctly about the lack of entertainment in Asfiel. Zin clutched the document anxiously, thinking that this was a serious expense for him, and therefore he was especially counting on the help of the person to whom he addressed it. Then he noticed the sign that the room was reserved, and Alan frowned, admitting that the situation was becoming quite unfortunate. Afterwards, Alan thought he was missing his chance to see the right person, noted the tightly closed curtains of the restaurant, and hesitated to wait outside, realizing that this could only complicate the situation. Meanwhile, Zin called out to Ina, asking why she had stopped at the store, and she turned around abruptly under the thin crescent moon with an inscrutable look. A little later, the young man approached the girl, who was standing with her arms crossed, and calmly said that he wanted to give a gift to the Black Princess, which aroused her curiosity. Then Alan handed Ina the book, saying that it was free and that she should throw it away if she didn't need it, and then quickly left, leaving her to wonder who he was and why he had disappeared so quickly. After some time, Ina came inside with a wrapped package, and the girl in the store asked what was in it, and Ina explained that a suspicious man had handed over a package addressed to the captain. The girl with two tails asked to look at the item, then handed it to a woman named Kalkira, who quietly sniffed the contents and asked for its value. After checking, Alan nodded that he would take the item, and Albert reassured him, claiming that there was no poison or spell in it, and suggested that he simply hand it over to the captain. The girl with two tails handed the document to the captain, who asked what kind of papers they were and whether they could be opened, and she relayed the sender's words that they could be thrown away if they didn't want to. Alan noticed a stack of books and wondered if they were really books, while Ina was lost in thought and admitted that the item was rare, but the connection with the captain was unclear to her. At that moment, another girl sharply called out to Ina, demanding to know who exactly had delivered the package she was clutching to her chest. Immediately, another young running figure took off, and someone shouted an order to catch up with the divine child, while the breathless girl tried to understand what was happening and where she was. The girl suddenly felt the space around her distort, and remembered with shock that just a minute ago, she should have been waiting for the school bus. Later, Kita slowly opened her eyes, and Alan asked with relief if she had come to her senses and how she felt. The black-haired woman then calmly explained that they were just a modest couple who owned an inn, and that the girl had been found at the foot of the cliff, while the blonde woman asked in confusion who they were. The girl remembered falling from a height and thanked her savior, and the young man noted with embarrassment that they had hardly managed to do anything. The girl with the bow calmly noted that he had fallen from the same height and was not injured, adding that for a divine child this was quite natural. Then the girl with the large bow explained that messengers of the gods suddenly appear from another world, and their black hair serves as proof, while they poured her tea and another interlocutor clarified the meaning of this title. The girl with the bow was silent for a while the other explained that such people were supposedly granted special powers, but the girl admitted that she knew nothing about this, and her thoughts returned to the sudden and incomprehensible transference. Then Albert gently handed Ina some warm tea, advising her to recover first and only then think about other things, and she thanked him barely audibly, her expression softening. After this, the girl expressed gratitude for all the help provided and asked to take care of herself, to which one of her companions assured that this would be the case, wishing her to remain safe. Meanwhile, the dark-haired wanderer calmly announced that she had set out on a journey to find a way to return to the old world. At night, under the narrow crescent moon, the warrior with the long bow stood with her weapon at the ready, and behind her a crowd gathered, attracted by rumors of a divine child, thanks to which the Moon Dawn Company became famous throughout the country. Alan then noted that fate had generously gifted him with worthy people around him, and Albert reminded him that none of them had any real intentions for him and simply followed him. After this, the girl quietly admitted to herself that one day she wanted to tell everyone the truth, but at that moment, the doorbell rang, interrupting her thoughts. When Alan entered the tavern, the owner greeted him, and the young man asked whether this visitor was the sender of the letter. Then Albert ordered Xena to pour the guest a drink and reminded her to lock the door, and she only quietly thanked him for his concern. After this, the merchant sheepishly remarked that she might be uncomfortable being alone with him, but explained that this was just a conversation between fellow countrymen, while the girl listened without objection. Alan then introduced himself as a 20-year-old unemployed man, and Sayoji Shizuku gave her name in response, and it was soon revealed that one of them was a reincarnated person. She asked him about his former name, and he quietly replied that he had once been Shinji Masato, an ordinary man who had died at the age of 25. Albert then awkwardly noted that he had asked unnecessary questions, but Alan, who was sitting next to him, calmly assured him that he did not feel any inconvenience. Afterwards, Alan asked Kita if she was a famous figure or an idol, surprised by her uncertainty, and Kita herself thought that the boy must have come from a different time since he didn't react to the name Sayoji. Zin then noted that 20 years had passed since his death and acknowledged that the times had changed, while Ina replied that her area in Japan was reminiscent of the Showa era and therefore she hardly felt the changes. She then asked him eagerly whether he was capable of returning to Japan, but the man firmly stated that it was impossible for him. After this, the girl with two tails apologized for the false hope and reminded that living beings, except for herself, cannot pass between worlds, and the other only calmly accepted this fact. Zin explained that, among other things, he could purchase things and send them when necessary, and his interlocutor, although silent, admitted that this was also useful for her. Then Zin noticed the empty glass and offered to pour another, showing the bottle, but the girl hesitated, mentioning that the owner of the establishment was not there at the moment, although she had initially agreed. After this, Zin handed Ina some tea, adding that he wasn't sure if she would like the taste, and she carefully accepted the mug and thanked him. Alan then noted that the aroma and aftertaste of this tea were completely different from what he makes at home, and the girl admitted that the drink was surprisingly pleasant despite its unfamiliarity. Then the young man remembered that despite her reliability, she was still a schoolgirl in front of him, and this required him to be especially careful in his communication. Afterwards, Alan calmly assured his interlocutor that she had done nothing to embarrass him, helping her regain her confidence after admitting to awkward behavior. Meanwhile, Kita, clutching her cup, was thinking about how she wanted to find a way back to Japan, but still felt an inner peace, and Alan, at that moment, mentally recalled how he himself almost burst into tears when he tried soba for the first time after reincarnation and offered to get some for her too. He then cheerfully agreed to act as a sponsor since he was asked to prepare all the necessary things in exchange for a favor. After this, the girl with the large bow stood up, hearing that the young man had neither registration nor a stable income, and offered to write a letter, checking whether he knew how to properly fill out documents. The next morning, she gathered everyone again and apologized for disturbing them, saying she wanted to introduce a new person, while the two nearby listened sleepily. She then announced that Alan was joining them, and he greeted the group shyly, trying to look confident. After this, Kita cautiously reminded him of the strange man from yesterday, doubting the captain's decision, but Albert calmly confirmed that the newcomer could be trusted, and Alan at that moment quietly realized where fate had led him. Meanwhile, one of the squad members voiced concerns about the choice of captain and the presence of a man on the expedition, and the other two listened attentively to the argument. Camilla then tasked Aina with training the new recruit, explaining that he could count and read, which meant he would be able to keep track of supplies, and Alan silently noted that this was exactly what Sayoji had been trying to achieve. After that, he asked how Kita managed to interest the captain, and she admitted that the effort was worth it, adding that she herself did not expect to end up in the brigade, and Alan noted that he had never seen the captain so animated. Then one of the fighters, looking at the scroll, was amazed that a man was joining a female detachment, considering the event almost incredible. After this, Alan thoughtfully lingered his gaze on the book, and Aina offered to help and showed the catalog, hinting that they could use an extra pair of hands. He then asked if she managed the supplies alone, and the girl calmly confirmed, explaining that only the captain and she were capable of counting for 30 people. After this, she ordered the name of the team to be given so as not to overpay the merchants for provisions, and then, with a sigh, she decided to check the warehouse herself. Zin then turned around and warned him not to overexert himself, after which Aina waved goodbye to him at the door before leaving. Meanwhile, Albert walked through the noisy crowd, thinking that he would never have thought he would find himself in such a situation, and joining the squad might have allowed him to work with the nobles without a shadow of a doubt. At that moment, someone called out to Alan, and he realized that he now had to show results, otherwise he would not become a full member of the team. Then one girl asked if it was true that he was joining the Moon Squad, while another young man pretended not to know, and a third greeted them with obvious surprise. Afterwards, Albert remarked with genuine delight that Alan seemed to have found both a job and a companion, and then asked about his connection to the Black Princess. Alan nervously dismissed the suggestion, recalling that it had only happened that morning, and someone's voice had warned him admonishingly about the power of the local housewife network. Then Albert remembered the frightening rumor with slight unease, feeling like he was just a random link, because the girl had simply been interested in the thing he had exchanged, and the interlocutor had only responded sympathetically. Afterwards, Alan calmly noted that he was still carrying out his usual purchasing errands, and another participant amiably congratulated him on his first step into trading and wished him success, while a third recalled how delicious the recent sweets had been. Then Albert suggested that they come to his shop for the best prices, and Alan asked in surprise if he was sure, to which the merchant confidently confirmed his offer. Later, Alan was warmly greeted by a boy who wished him luck in his work, and the young man himself sighed, anticipating more pressure from the local mothers, and looked around, hearing someone calling him again. He then vigorously offered special service in his store and inquired if additional goods were needed, until Albert, surrounded by a crowd, raised his hand and admitted that there were too many orders. After this, Aina praised one of the participants for a good job, asked how the shopping went, and, holding the bag, turned around, waiting for a report. Meanwhile, the girl watched as someone knocked on the door, announcing that they would leave the bill outside, and another participant began to carefully leaf through the papers, checking the entries. Albert then expressed surprise at the amount, suspecting an overspending, but Alan explained that his friends had given him a discount, while Aina sharply declared that the price was actually 20% lower, accusing him of using a suspicious method to obtain it. After this, Zin sighed heavily and admitted that he had not intended to go that far, but fell silent when Aina turned and walked away, leaving him to ponder at the threshold. Then the girl with twin ponytails smiled confidently and said that she was ready to issue a small loan. Later, Alan stepped through the door, feeling the cool breeze and holding the letter from Sayoji, wondering if it would be enough to settle things further, noting how calm Japan seemed. Meanwhile, the confused girl was breathing heavily in the middle of an unfamiliar place, trying to understand what had happened, while screams were heard around her, ordering her to seize the priestess. Then she stopped at the gate, remembering that she was supposed to be waiting for the school car, when suddenly, the surrounding landscape began to distort. Later, the young woman came to, and the friendly couple who ran the inn asked about her well-being, and explained that they had found her at the foot of the cliff, apologizing for the fright she had experienced. Kaida thanked her for saving her after the fall, and Alan modestly noted that they had done little and mentally recognized her as a worthy servant of the temple. The black-haired girl then explained that priestesses were believed to be messengers of the deity who suddenly appeared from another world, pointing to her hair as proof as tea was poured nearby. After this, the owners explained that the chosen ones are granted special powers, but the girl with the bow herself admitted that she knew nothing about this, since the events befell her too suddenly. Later, the dark-haired guest rose from her bed, and the blonde handed her a cup, reminding her of the need to recover first, and the girl quietly thanked her for her concern. The man and woman then expressed their gratitude for the help provided and wished others to take care of themselves, and they, in turn, hoped that the couple would also be okay. And finally, the dark-haired girl calmly stated that she had set out on a journey to find a way back to the old world. Thanks to the priestess's power, people gradually gathered around her, and soon the early Moon Squad gained fame throughout the country, attracting more and more supporters. Afterwards, she recalled how lucky she was to meet those who accepted her without any questions and simply followed her forward. Meanwhile, the girl hoped that one day she would be able to reveal the truth to the others, and from the next room came the soft clanging of metal. Later, Alan, sitting at the counter, asked the owner if he had sent the letter, and he nodded in greeting, accepting the new guest. Ziana was then reminded to offer her a drink and lock the door, after which the scene moved to a quiet bar where the two silently browsed the shelves. Zine then apologized, suggesting that his interlocutor might be uncomfortable being alone with him, clarifying that this was just a conversation between equal citizens, while Kita listened attentively. Gradually, the conversation turned to which of them was from Japan. One said he was reincarnated, then Alan introduced himself as a 20-year-old unemployed man, and Shizuku Sayoji gave her name and age. After this, Aina asked about his real name, and Zine calmly revealed that in his previous life he was an ordinary Masato Shinjo who died at the age of 25. She sheepishly admitted that she had asked unnecessary questions, but he remarked that he didn't mind, after which he asked if she was a famous person, while the girl was surprised by his reaction to the name Sayoji. She then added that her Japan was reminiscent of the Showa era, so the changes were barely felt, and the young man admitted that the world had changed noticeably in the 20 years since his death. The girl with ponytails asked sharply whether it was still possible to get to Japan, but the young man firmly stated that returning there was out of the question. After this, she explained that living beings, except herself, could not cross the border of worlds, and apologized for the vain hope, while the listener quietly accepted this thought. Then Zine pointed out that there were other ways to help besides sending the necessary things, and Alan silently admitted that this was reasonable. Later, Zine saw the empty glass and offered to have another drink, but the girl noticed the absence of the owner of the establishment, which made him hesitate a little. Then Albert hesitantly served the tea, doubting whether the taste would be to his liking, and the woman who received the drink quietly thanked him, while the other woman inquired about the details. Afterwards, Albert noted that the aroma and taste were very different from what he cooks at home and seemed unsuccessful, while Aina calmly admitted that she still liked it. Alan recalled that despite her reliability, she was still a high school student, and Zian admitted that he had shown a weak side, and the girl assured him that nothing terrible had happened. Then she quietly admitted that she had been looking for at least a hint of a way back to Japan, but still felt happier, and he remembered how, after reincarnation, he had cried when he tried soba for the first time, and offered to bring some to her too. Later, Zine agreed to become a sponsor in exchange for the necessary things, answering confidently as someone's hand placed a vessel of ice on the counter. Finally, Albert warned her not to demand the impossible, reminding her of his lack of registration and stable income, but she offered to send a letter and asked whether he could handle the paperwork. The morning began calmly, clear skies, a quiet courtyard in front of the house. Then a girl with a large bow apologized for getting ready early and announced she wanted to introduce the new arrival. Afterwards, another member brought Alan forward as the newest member, and he responded with a welcoming smile. Then another recognized him as the strange guy from yesterday and was surprised by the captain's decision, while he assured her that the newcomer could be trusted, and Alan silently considered the situation. The leader then emphasized that he had no plans to take him on missions yet, but out of respect for the others' opinions, he suggested entrusting him with supplies, since he could count and read, and asked Aina to train the newcomer. Alan later asked his partner how she had managed to interest the captain, and she admitted that her efforts had not been in vain, adding that she had not even expected to end up in the brigade, while he noted that he had never seen the leader so animated. He then looked through the documents and asked for clarification on a few points, and Kita explained that the extra help would really be useful, handing him the catalog. After this, Albert wondered if she had really been managing all this time alone, and the girl confirmed that only the captain and she could handle the calculations for about 3 dozen people. Then one of the participants sighed heavily, deciding to check the supplies herself and suggesting that they go shopping, while the other noted that mentioning their squad would ensure a fair price from the merchants. A little later, Zine, frowning slightly, wished not to overexert himself and to remember his own strength. Afterwards, Alan walked down the busy street thinking that he hadn't expected this turn of events, and wondering if being a member of the gang might one day allow him to work with aristocrats without hesitation. Then someone called out to him, and Alan realized that he now had to show results to earn the recognition of others. Then the girl asked if it was true that he had joined the early moon squad. The young man next to her was surprised by the rumor, and another one noted that for now it was just gossip. Meanwhile, Albert and two lively girls began teasing Alan, hinting at work and a possible girlfriend, which he sheepishly denied, while one explained that such news was spread by a network of housewives. He later admitted with dismay that he had become merely a coincidence because she liked the item in exchange, and another interlocutor noted that rumors can sometimes be frightening, asking if it was true. In response, Albert noted that he was currently carrying out routine supply errands, and Alan encouraged him with the start of the trade route, and Kita remembered that the delicacies he brought were very tasty. Albert then invited Alan to come into his shop and promised a better price, and he, slightly stunned, agreed. After this, Alan's name was called again several times, and he thought about the persistence of the local mothers, turning to see who was calling him this time, while a man nearby wished him luck in his work, and Alan thanked him. Meanwhile, Albert was surrounded by a lively crowd, and Alan only had time to marvel at the scale of everything, while those around him offered help and encouraged his further efforts. Later, Ina praised the completed task and clarified whether the shopping had been successful, holding the bag with the purchased items in her hands. Then Albert became alarmed by the figures on the invoice, deciding that the budget had been exceeded, but Ina sharply explained that the cost was, on the contrary, 20% lower than usual, and reproached him for secret machinations, although he hastened to justify himself. In conclusion, the girl quietly exhaled and left, and the young man followed her example, admitting that he had not wanted to go so far, but now he had to accept what was happening. The girl with the high ponytails turned slightly and, smiling confidently, promised to give her a little credit, as if it was a small gesture for her. Alan then stepped through the doorway, feeling the soft breeze and shielding his eyes from the bright light, noting again how calm Japan seemed. After this, the gloved, blonde-haired young man unfolded the letter from Sayoji, wondering what consequences it might have for both parties. They later reached the royal capital, and he admitted that the journey had been long, noting that Limbert would henceforth be their main base. Then, the dark-haired girl announced that the team's new home was completely ready, reminding everyone to check their own rooms. Alan agreed, but then she asked if he intended to return to Japan immediately after completing his current job. After that, the girl with cat ears gave the boy a task to deal with and walked away, and he wondered if she really liked it, and then decided to buy the second volume of Yume Koi after some hesitation. Soon, a man in a suit was talking on the phone near the car, and Alan, arriving in Japan, was surprised by the commotion until another greeter greeted him warmly. Albert then asked who these people were, and learned from the elderly man that they were representatives of the Sayoji group, who had been searching for him throughout the village for a week. When Sayoji was asked who was gathered at the car, he decided to come out to them himself, since they were obviously looking for him, and he hesitantly addressed them with a greeting. After this, one of the arrivals clarified whether he was Alan, and, having received confirmation, suggested that he immediately get into the car so as not to stand in the scorching sun. The girl with wavy hair lit a cigarette and said that the search had taken a lot of effort, adding that she couldn't even buy normal cigarettes here. The man next to him apologized and asked if it was really because of Sayoji's letter that all this started, and the woman calmly replied that it was okay to call her by her name, Akira. After this, Alan was noticeably surprised to hear the hint that someone had known about the young lady for a long time. Zine then reported that the target had been delivered and requested backup, warning the passengers in the car that if they remained calm, nothing would happen to them. The girl dryly remarked that ideally he should return home safe and sound, and at that moment the crunch of someone's shoe was heard underfoot. The city stretched out under a cloudy sky as the car moved down the street, and inside, one of the passengers asked Akira for details about Sayoji's group. Albert then explained that Sayoji was a large corporation involved in information technology and real estate, both domestically and internationally, comparing it to a huge holding company, and Alan asked if he really hadn't known about this before. The narrative went on to remind us that the Sayoji family had once been considered one of the richest in Tokyo, and that the Kamiki clan had served them for generations, beginning with the young lady's father, Ryugen-sama, who had founded the company. The ending shows a hand tightly clutching a leg, Then the girls gaze deep in thought, followed by a quiet scene of her drinking tea while someone comments on the excellent taste of Akira's drink, and the narrator recalls how he first started working at the main house 3 years ago. The maid thanked the girl with a polite bow, but she gently remarked that there was no need for unnecessary formality between them, while the third observer frowned in mild irritation. Then one of the girls asked if her friend had recorded the episode of Yumikor and whether she was going to stay from today, after which she suggested watching it all together in the evening, and her interlocutor playfully agreed, calling her her mistress. At that very moment, Albert loudly called Kamiki, reporting bad news, and the maid noticed that someone should soon return home, although there was an unexpected bustle in the estate. After this, a girl with wavy hair burst inside and abruptly announced that Miss Shizuki had disappeared, emphasizing that everything had happened suddenly and without the slightest warning. One of those present immediately demanded to see the camera footage, insisting that what had happened was a mistake that should not have happened, while others indignantly asked what the guards were doing and what it all meant. Meanwhile, the girl with 2 ponytails picked up a strange hum from the street, and her partner urgently promised to check the recordings and immediately noticed something suspicious, while the 2 observers were intently watching the many screens, assuming that someone had simply disappeared. The search for the young woman stretched across the globe, but no leads were found. Other than a connection with one man, she later approached the car and apologized for trying to mislead him. Zine, walking next to Camilla, noted with surprise that he never expected to see such a building near the village of Akene, and their steps echoed rhythmically on the stone slabs. The man then knocked on the door and informed Chairman Rugen that he had brought a guest, after which he asked if the visitor was Alan, and the young man confirmed it. Albert noticed a slight tension in his interlocutor's behavior, while the man in the suit admitted that the young man looked very much like the same guy mentioned in his daughter's letter. Alan instinctively retreated, feeling pressure from the representative of a large company, but Albert laughed and tried to dispel his anxiety, assuring him that no one considered him a kidnapper. After this, the man explained that the letter was written in an encrypted family language that could not be forged, which meant only one thing: his daughter was alive, and in front of him stood the man she completely trusted. Zine asked how exactly they had been found, and the man explained that the letter could be traced by its postmark and that it mentioned Alan's appearance, while the woman standing nearby listened without saying a word. Albert then, walking down the long corridor, recalled that Shizuka always had a lot of security, but 3 years ago she disappeared as if she had dissolved into thin air, and he still remembered his own shock. The man recalled how he had received a handwritten letter from his daughter asking him to help her partner, and now he looked at it silently, realizing the seriousness of what was happening. Albert asked Alan if he could share what he knew, and the boy asked if the room was being recorded, to which the man replied that there was no surveillance here except for a one-way mirror. Then the girl ran in, trying to call Rugen, and at the same time as the man, she pointed her gun, but the calm woman suggested they look at one thing first and asked everyone to lower their weapons. Alan then calmly explained that the portal that had appeared before them was the result of his ability, and those present reacted with a mixture of surprise and attentive interest. The man added that this passage connects their world with another place, and that the chairman's daughter is now on the other side, which made the girl next to him noticeably confused. In conclusion, Zine clarified the terms of use of the portal and, sighing, explained that, as far as he understood, only he was capable of passing through it, although the nature of this phenomenon remained a mystery to him. One of the men cautiously asked if he could touch the object, and after permission was given, the two began to examine it carefully, lightly touching the surface, while the girl watched warily from behind. The man then wondered what his daughter was doing in the fantasy world where she led a group of adventurers, and her subordinate calmly explained the situation, although the father himself had a hard time taking it seriously. Rugen asked Alan if he believed what he had heard, and the young man admitted that he perceived everything as a fairy tale, but at that moment he was approached with a request, asking for a small assistance. After this, the woman asked to take a photo of her daughter on a smartphone, and Alan wondered how to use the device, mistaking it for a modern phone, while she assured that she would do everything she mentioned in the letter. Meanwhile, Albert doubted the veracity of the story and suggested ulterior motives, which made Alan noticeably nervous, but he still heard that the fact of the letter's transmission remained undeniable. Albert then thanked the young man and asked him to convey his warm wishes to his daughter, to which Alan agreed, after which they exchanged a firm handshake. Later, the girl calmly drank tea and asked if the young man had seen her father, and Alan explained that too many people had arrived in the village, and as the heir, he had to deal with them, although he had not at all expected the appearance of the head of the family himself. Kita listened attentively as Albert explained that Chairman Rugen had handed him a smartphone for a photographic proof, although the salesman himself had reacted to it with an indifferent sigh. Albert noticed how deftly Shizuki handled the device, and then she asked to lend it to her for a minute and immediately saw a video message addressed personally to her, which said that if she was watching the recording, it meant she was still alive. Zine was surprised by the image quality and asked if modern phones really conveyed images in such detail, suggesting that it could even be 4K, and Albert smiled softly, recognizing their father's typical intonation. The girl held the smartphone tightly with a slightly embarrassed smile, while the boy remarked that it was not nice to peek, and then she wondered where Alan had gone, as she wanted to return the device to him. A moment later, a dark-haired girl entered the room and remarked on the fortunate timing, and the one with the twin tails announced that everyone was there, while the young man checked to see if the smartphone was working properly. Then the tall girl called the others to come over for a group photo, and the cat-eyed member of the squad, surprised, asked the captain to join her. The entire group lined up in front of the camera, and when the lens clicked, the person behind the device gave a countdown, suggesting that they smile in a few seconds. After this, Zine wondered if he was really starting to find common ground with the squad, and Alan admitted that he was gradually getting used to the team, and the girl advised him to adapt to life at the new base. The scene then shifted to a bustling market in the capital, where many stalls stood shoulder to shoulder, and the girl asked the young man if he had heard of the Royal Bazaar, arousing his natural interest. Zine listened intently as they explained to him that the trading rows stretched from simple artisans to noble houses, and that the adventurer's quest would have to be temporarily postponed, offering him a break as something interesting had appeared ahead. The girl with two ponytails asked what exactly had happened, and the young man with partially closed eyes asked if anyone could open their own shop. Meanwhile, Alan, thoughtfully examining the application to register a retail outlet, admitted that he was not yet sure what exactly he wanted to sell. When he returned home, he ran into Camilla, who cheerfully asked him what he was doing while Lazuli and Ryuka stood nearby, watching in silence. Three girls were standing nearby, and one of them asked why the young man was leaving again, to which he calmly replied that she couldn't relax around him. Then the other guy quickly wished her luck and quickly took off. After this, Zine assured that no one else in the squad thought that way, and Albert admitted that he seriously considered himself superfluous, although the quiet steps of those who reminded him that not everyone is guided by bad intentions could be heard around. Then one of the women noted that the captain had noticeably changed recently, expressing sincere gratitude, and the two nearby recalled the praise of Alan and Ina, asserting that the squad is glad to see everyone who is useful. Alan reflected that the situation was difficult, but if he was accepted, then things couldn't be so bad, and Albert suggested he resembled a younger brother. Then Ina, beaming, added that he was more like a kind father to everyone. She asked what he had been doing, and Alan said he had been filling out an application for the market, thinking about opening his own shop. He then admitted he was still considering the idea, explaining it was just a trial run, and Ina, with keen interest, asked what he was planning to sell. Alan admitted he dreamed of selling sweets to the nobility, but hadn't yet found either the right product or an acceptable price. The three girls discussed the difficulty of finding a product that would interest aristocrats, while the young man watched as one of them excitedly tapped a shelf and suddenly announced that she had come up with a solution. Kita picked up the book and offered it to her comrade, asking how suitable his choice was, her expression remaining friendly and light. Alan wondered how they even read Japanese texts, and Kita enthusiastically announced that they could get a sequel, as Ryuka had been looking for one for a long time. Albert, meanwhile, remarked that the book the captain recommended had indeed been fascinating. Zine suggested that entertainment items might work better, although books weren't so easy to obtain. The group quietly accepted his conclusion, showing understanding and mild disappointment. Alan agreed to limit himself to a small supply, standing between Ina and Camilla, who looked at him with approving warmth. Then the cityscape changed, and Alan noted that this was where the difficulties would begin. He thought about how he'd given Chairman Rugen his smartphone and other things, but he wasn't sure they believed him until someone greeted him upon his arrival. Camilla introduced herself as his new assistant, expressed a desire to work together, and began to lead him down the corridor, but Alan suddenly slammed the door in her face, causing her obvious bewilderment. Afterwards, Zine apologized for his earlier reaction, explaining that he'd simply been flustered, and Ina cautiously asked if he could speak to her as openly as before. He categorically refused. Zine was lost in thought, and Camilla admitted that she felt relieved, believing that his abruptness meant that he had gained confidence in her. Meanwhile, the girl with long hair noted that there was no longer any reason to doubt, since the ore called Impact Stone, which glowed when struck, turned out to be an unknown material, which made Ryugen-sama extremely pleased. The story then shifted to documents, and Alan received a black credit card with no limit, along with instructions to use the assigned room as his own residence. He thanked her, feeling slightly confused. Soon he saw a bank statement with a balance of 100 million, which made him freeze, and at that moment a female voice quietly sounded from behind, calling his name. Albert handed him another document and explained that there were two conditions, and Alan, clutching his head, replied that he was grateful, but considered such a scale excessive. after which Alan calmly clarified that they needed his cooperation to study the gate, as well as a desire to learn about its power and the world from which it came. She calmly reminded everyone that supporting young Ms. Shizuka was almost their top priority and emphasized that this was a task of perhaps the highest importance. The girl then confidently asked the young man if he was willing to cooperate, and he nervously agreed, feeling a mixture of relief and fear. After this, Zine informed Alan that he would take upon himself his protection and escort, offering to speak freely, and then Alan, slightly stunned, admitted that he would like to ask for a favor. Later, they walked down a crowded street, and his companion was thinking about entertainment, and Alan admitted that he had long been unfamiliar with modern Japanese goods and could have chosen himself, but he had not decided to. He explained that he was trying to make his own connections as this was his first time in the royal capital, and Kita asked why he would even bring up the topic of opening a shop. Then Alan confidently declared that by winning over the nobility, he would strengthen the finances and become more useful to the detachment, although his interlocutor hesitated, reminding him of the unlimited funds. The girl was relieved to see his sincerity when he admitted that he wanted to get rich through his own labor and asked what he was going to buy, forcing him to stop and think about his answer. At that moment, Zine enthusiastically pointed to a display case with card games, assuring that it was ideal, and Alan was surprised, doubting whether these were really games, and listened to an explanation about the lack of entertainment in Asfiel. They then discussed board games and card sets, mentioning the popularity of such pastimes among the aristocracy. One suggested that collectible cards might stand out for their simplicity, while the other admitted he'd never seen them and didn't know which was better. The girl swiped a card across the table, explaining that their group had a company that dealt with collectible games, and the young man cautiously confirmed that he had heard about the Sayoji Corporation's versatility. Albert suddenly froze as he heard Camilla calmly request a whole warehouse of cross-world sets, and she clarified that it was just a trial batch, holding up a package from a game store. Alan sincerely thanked Kita for her help, and she gently replied that it was no problem. He then announced that he was going to look for sweets and books alone, but Kita immediately demurred, noting that he had enough on his plate. She smiled warmer, reminding him that any harm to the young lady would create a lot of difficulties, and he apologized and promised to take care of the matter, after which she confidently told him to entrust it to her. Alan then marveled at modern video discs, finished CDs, and even new panels, while Kita tried to understand with bewilderment what he meant. Meanwhile, another girl quietly called out to Akira, and he, lost in nostalgia, remembered how the young lady had once wanted to watch something together, but it never happened. After this, Albert awkwardly apologized for his careless remark, while Ina stepped aside, explaining that his words had simply been misunderstood. The girl began to think that serving alongside someone was not the only meaning of life, and the young man listened to her calmly and agreed to give the important thing to the young lady, having received the assurance that she would take care of the rest. Alan listened attentively as Ina turned around and suggested storing everything on the tablet. Manga, TV series, recordings, because if entertainment is scarce, it's better to have a supply of content. At that moment, the girl called out to Alan, who was coming down the stairs, and said that she had received permission for the trading point he had mentioned earlier. He handed Kita the necessary paperwork, sighing with relief that the paperwork had gone smoothly, and she quietly added that some of the goods would be delivered right on the day of the market, apologizing in advance for the lack of space. Zine was worried that Alan's store might fail, while Albert wondered how much anyone really needed such a product, and Kita casually asked Ryuki when she was planning to come, receiving the answer that she would show up in the evening with Camilla, since Lazuli was busy. Alan then listened to a story about rumors that the central area was surrounded by a high wall, concealing the holdings of influential nobility, and noted that commoners almost never get to see those who live inside. The girl explained that it is precisely these lovers of rarities and secret acquisitions who sometimes come to the market unnoticed, especially if they live near the central district. After this, the conversation turned to a rumor that could cause a real stir, and the interlocutor suggested that he figure out the essence of the hint himself, which caused genuine bewilderment in the young man. Kita laughed merrily, and Alan asked what made her laugh, to which she confidently replied that he had stumbled upon something extremely amusing without noticing it. Zine tried to understand the meaning of the expression, sensing a slight mockery, but Albert patiently explained that it was just a compliment, after which Zine admitted that he was looking forward to the coming day with interest. Alan felt something was wrong as he looked at the closed door, but soon calmed himself down, deciding to simply wait for the exhibition and watch events unfold on their own. As the royal bazaar began to bustle with activity, the fair-haired young man smiled confidently, believing the event had finally begun, and headed towards a stall selling expensive mineral accessories. Zine had been toying with the idea of Fi selling books to a select few, but his main focus was on selling chocolate, and as he looked around the bustling market, he suddenly found himself in a quiet, inner concentration. Nearby, they were discussing the main event of the evening, noting the many visitors in the morning and the natural appearance of the aristocracy among the audience. Alan clenched his fist with renewed determination. Despite the prestigious shops nearby, the quality of his goods could not be inferior, and he had to take advantage of the opportunity. Zine stood at the empty counter in the bright sun, thinking that he had to seize the opportunity, although for some reason no one came to his place. Alan wondered if it was him or the unusual nature of the product that was causing customers to avoid it, and meanwhile he watched a woman leisurely studying a display case nearby. Albert looked rather gloomy, and Alan asked why, after which he admitted that he had come for a business meeting, but decided to stop by the market at the same time. Alan, with a small bird on his head, sarcastically asked if he had come there to tease him, but Albert was surprised, praised him as a novice trader, and noted his successes, but Alan still refused to share advice, considering them rivals. Alan was pondering the difficulty of selling unusual foods without samples, and Albert, watching him thoughtfully, sensed that he was about to reveal some important approach. Albert then suggested that they target the middle class, as the market was held weekly, and Alan agreed, though he sighed wearily, reminding himself to continue until the end of the afternoon session and admitting that he still had a lot to learn. Zine wisely noted that the most important things in trade are the quality of the goods and trust, and added that his interlocutor, as a fellow merchant, certainly understood these two pillars of the craft. Alan thanked Albert, who insisted that he had never called his shop small, although Zine himself found this dubious, and then Albert was about to leave, but suddenly remembered another important matter. Albert confidently noted that along the way one often manages to find something valuable beyond the original goal, and he said this against the backdrop of a quiet city street, as if hinting at hidden opportunities. Alan yawned and noted that the response from people was weak, adding that only a few customers had stopped by later, which made him doubt the success of today. As the sky darkened, the young man began to ponder his dream of becoming rich through his own labor, but he also sensed another goal, one that hadn't yet formed in his mind. Meanwhile, the two companions decided to close their business early and immediately noticed a suspicious figure approaching. Alan saw the crowd around the armored guards and immediately realized that the man was clearly no commoner. He whispered that he was the eldest son of the Marquis Castellano and tried to figure out why he had appeared here. Albert spotted the disguised man examining the stalls and urged Alan to get ready, who, with a tense smile, acknowledged that the rumor was true and braced himself. The stranger asked what kind of kiosk it was, and looked around the counter with a slight smile, showing genuine curiosity. Albert explained to Alan that they had brought some of the world's rarest goods, delicacies, and funny toys, then suggested trying chocolate with a distinctive aroma. The guards tried to warn Ray against eating in the commoner's shop, but he calmly replied that he would explain everything himself if necessary, and the guards were forced to apologize as the ground beneath their feet trembled slightly. Alan asked for clarification on the ingredients, and Albert explained the process in detail. Cocoa beans are ground, mixed with sugar and vanilla, and then the mixture is allowed to harden, demonstrating how to hold the wrapper so as not to melt the bar. Alan then repeated his explanation of how to make chocolate, and the girl next to him asked with interest if she could learn more about it, hinting at a possible collaboration. Alan practiced holding the wrapper properly, then carefully bit into the chocolate, but hesitantly noted to himself that the aroma seemed a little strong as the knight watched his reaction nearby. He admiringly declared the taste marvelous, though he was immediately corrected for talking while eating. Afterward, he asked the price, and the vendor informed him that a set of 8 pieces cost 30,000 gold, offering to take the wrapping paper with him. Zine was surprised by such a low price and without hesitation declared that he would take it all, immediately handing over the payment and acting with unexpected decisiveness. Alan quickly assured him that there was no need to worry about the high price, after which Zine asked about other goods, and Alan explained that Compito candy was made of sugar granules. They discussed various sugar-based sweets, and one of the interlocutors became interested in several types at once, deciding to buy them all without exception. Alan noted that he had already spent about $1 million of his own budget while Zine was counting the bags of money. Then Alan inquired about the contents of one of the paper bags. He explained that the cards contained packs of collectible cards, with each pack containing 5 random copies, and that the point of the game was to create a deck of 40 cards for duels, pointing to the rules nearby. Without hesitation, Zihan declared that he was buying the entire run, which left Alan with mixed feelings but also gratitude, as Zihan admired the elegant design on the card he had chosen. Albert also noted the high quality of the goods, emphasizing that 5 pieces for 3,000 gold is a rarity, and he thought about buying one package as a souvenir, and 2 guards showed obvious interest in this. Alan looked thoughtfully at the mysterious metal in his hand, pondering the astonishing financial courage of the nobility and trying to understand what value was hidden in the unfamiliar object. Alan hurried in, apologizing for being late, and Camilla, noticing the lively atmosphere, was surprised by the news that all the goods had already been sold out. Zine reacted with the same surprise and confirmed what he had heard, while Alan and Albert simultaneously sank into disappointment, with Albert admitting that he thought they were running for the next volume of Yumekoi. Alan smiled warmly, noting that he hadn't expected the item to be so carefully hidden, and then suggested that everyone, including the captain, read it together, chuckling quietly. Late that evening, Alan was taking notes when a girl appeared in the room and noticed his diligence, addressing him as Sayoji. She explained that she had only gone out for water and would be back soon, and the young man asked why she wasn't reading Yume Koi with everyone else, mentioning his desire to update the register. The girl asked if there had been any difficulties at the royal fair, and the guy replied that a lot had happened, but everything was fine, deciding to tell the details later. The owner of Two Ribbons stopped for a moment, feeling a little strange, and remembered that she had decided to become a merchant to get rich for herself and not for others. Then Alan, with a gentle smile, admitted that, despite the gratitude of many, he felt an internal imbalance. After this, he handed over a small box as a token of gratitude and asked if his interlocutor had heard his words. The girl quietly confirmed this. Zine hesitantly opened the box and saw the sparkling necklace, wondering out loud if it was really what it seemed. Alan examined the piece, admiring the stone's vibrant hue, while the woman next to him explained that it was a rare magical conduit that still couldn't express her full gratitude. Zine thought about it and admitted that thanks to this man, he was able to contact his family again and meet Akira, even if the motives were different. Alan smiled sheepishly, saying that the chairman had said the same thing, noting the resemblance between father and daughter, while Aina looked at him with surprise and slight bewilderment. He then listened silently as the girl stated that she was counting on him for matters concerning her father and Akira, handing over the responsibility to him. Alan noted their striking resemblance and promised to help as much as he could, after which the dark-haired girl sincerely thanked him and said that she would carefully keep the gift, and he quietly agreed. The young man walked down the spacious corridor, remembering how lively the fair had been, but then another participant called out to him for secretly entering the city. In response, Alan cheerfully offered him a gift, smoothing over the situation. Then he waved goodbye cheerfully, promising to see her tomorrow, and Aina, standing under the Gothic arch with a diary in her hands, looked up thoughtfully and whispered that this event had special significance. Zine noticed a medal fall nearby and, sitting alone on the bench, quietly suggested that it might be Promix's medal. Camilla cheerfully greeted a familiar man who asked if she was training, but the girl replied that she was currently resting and added that she wanted to see someone who had been here before. Alan curiously asked if she knew anything about the medal, and Camilla examined the find carefully and quickly realized its true nature. Camilla invited everyone to join her for tea, and Alan, slightly confused, stood at the threshold. At this time, the girl with braids doubted how he could not know such an obvious thing, wondering whether the object really belonged to him. Someone happily announced that they would be right there, while another participant realized that he had missed the opportunity to ask about the medal. Then someone's surprised voice noticed the brightly colored sweets on the table. The girl explained that she had received the cookies as a gift from Alan, and he, smiling, reminded her that he had asked her for advice before the market. Soon, two children asked what animal the figurine depicted, and one noticed a resemblance to a cat. Three girls sat at a table enjoying tea and refreshments, while one young man, feeling out of place, watched them from a distance. A girl with long hair asked how the fair had gone, noting that she had heard it had been a great success, to which her interlocutor replied that all the goods had been bought by one buyer, which surprised her. Alan added that this was the man who had given him the medals, causing Kita's eyes to widen and Albert to ask to see the find. Aina chuckled, believing that this couldn't be true, but Alan calmly confirmed what he had heard. He wondered if these were the gold and silver Pramika badges, and asked what they actually were. Aina explained that such medals were necessary for free passage into restricted areas, showing off hers. Another girl clarified that you can only get a golden Pramika after official recognition by the guild, and admitted that this is the first time she has seen one like this. Albert added that entry was only possible at an educational institution whose emblem matched the medal symbol. Alan then confirmed that he had received the silver one from the academic district, and Camilla was reminded that she too had once held one. A scene then opened overlooking the capital's academic district, explaining that Alan could now move freely within. The symbol shown belonged to the N5 Magic Academy. Afterward, one girl suggested asking the academy about the person who issued the symbol, while another suggested the golden one was likely connected to the central district, but was unsure of the exact details. Zine was thinking that the very fact of handing it over was hinting at an invitation, while Alan remarked in the background that he would like to see the sender again, causing Zine to wonder if he had understood the hint correctly. Zine felt uneasy at the thought of meeting the Marquis's heir alone, while Ina suggested that Camilla be their guide, reminding them that the academic quarter was huge and that Camilla had graduated from an institution in the area. Ina confidently assured him that she would be his special escort, sincerely thanking Yumakoyu, and he thought with relief that now he wouldn't get lost and could rely on her. Alan and Ina walked to a viewing platform overlooking the entire academic district. Alan remarked on its vastness, and Ina explained that it was the capital's largest district, housing academies and government research centers. Alan sighed in relief, thanking her for coming and admitting that he could easily have gotten lost on his own, while the girl looked at him with a slight question in her eyes. Ina noticed a checkpoint ahead and suggested heading there, and Zine, holding the gift in his hands, confirmed that it was cold and agreed to hurry, after which they headed towards the gate together. The girl, looking around, recalled familiar places with delight, and the young man next to her quietly noted that he felt as if he had entered a completely different world. One of them pointed to a building in the distance, and the other announced that it was the majestic cathedral of the religious school of Sandria, the only such temple in the royal capital. Alan asked what they taught at this school, and Ina explained that they studied medical techniques, sacred magic, and healing skills, which required extensive training to master. Alan listened attentively as Ina explained that Vice Captain Nana had graduated from a different religious school, was proficient in both healing and holy magic, and was rumored to even surpass the captain in reputation, which left a strong impression on Alan. Zian reflected that he hadn't spoken to the vice captains yet, and after a brief discussion about the need to keep his distance due to Rafine's dislike of men, Alan calmly agreed to abide by this rule. Camilla was asked about her place of study, and she explained that she graduated from the Leotal Magic School for Commoners, which surprised the others and began to discuss the rigid hierarchy of educational institutions. Alan noted that magical power and inclinations are inherited, which is why aristocrats study at the highest academies, singling out 5 prestigious schools, while one of his companions showed clear interest in what he heard. Zine was thinking about magical superiority, remembering how the kingdom of Canelice promoted the development of strong magical bloodlines, when Ina suddenly pointed to something ahead, and he explained that it hardly affected commoners. Before them stood a majestic building, reminiscent of a castle, and the interlocutor noticed that everything around looked excessively monumental. Zine politely asked the guard to let his companion inside, and the guard agreed, asking him to show his right hand, which Zine did with a slight effort. He inquired about the device's purpose, but Ina explained it was a security artifact and asked him to be patient. She then warned that if the rules were broken, guards would immediately come running, so he should be careful. Alan and the girl entered a spacious corridor, and she noted how different this complex was from Lyotal. They soon spotted the legendary Lev dormitory, traditionally home to the royal family. Zine asked who their conversation partner would be, and Alan replied that it was Ray Castellano, the same customer who had recently visited their stall at the bazaar. Albert turned around abruptly when he heard someone call Camilla, and she sheepishly apologized, asking him to repeat what he had said. The young man explained that Ray Castellano was the heir of the Marquis of Castellano, and at that moment Camilla closed her eyes. Leaves rose up around her in a whirlwind, and she quickly took off, racing through the architectural gallery, leaving behind someone's surprised exclamations. Albert grabbed Alan's arm sharply, demanding to know why he had an acquaintance with the great nobleman, but Alan tried to break free and reminded him that he had already told him about this before. The Castellanos were introduced as one of the 3 powerful families of the magical world, and someone in despair declared that it was dangerous for commoners to meet such an heir, otherwise they could be executed for disrespect, which caused the girl to scream that she had been deceived and flatly refused to go further. The girl with the braids looked down gloomily, and the young man in the cloak next to him swayed, while the other explained that besides the Lion Dormitory there were 3 others, based on family affiliation, and he should choose the Great Eagle. Albert warned Camilla that she had no official permission to be in the area and could be detained, but she put on a polite smile and asked if she could leave. Zian sensed the situation was spiraling out of control, muttering that a meeting with the Marquis's heir was impossible, but Alan calmly remarked that a meeting with a knight or the descendant of an impoverished barony would be more appropriate for commoners, after which he apologized to Camilla and promised to apologize properly later. The butler greeted Alan with respect, confirmed his name, and invited him inside, instructing him to wait in a separate room until Lord Ray's quick return. When the door slammed, Albert noticed that the girl had turned pale and asked if she was okay, but she reassured him with a soft smile, claiming that she felt fine. Alan suddenly tensed up and carefully asked if everything was really okay, and then the woman admitted that for a moment she felt like her soul was being pulled out, which made Alan fall silent in shock. Zine greeted the familiar man with a warm gesture, noting that quite a while had passed since the fair, while a dense crowd slowly passed by them. Albert politely thanked Alan for the invitation, while Alan calmly advised him not to be shy, since it was he who had invited him here, after which his hair slightly fluttered as he moved. Camilla asked who exactly was present at the table, and Zine hesitated and gave an uncertain, trying to find the words. Albert felt uneasy, thinking that perhaps he had said something unnecessary, as Camilla looked at him with silent reproach, and then Alan anxiously turned to her for support, feeling that the situation had reached an impasse. Albert explained that due to space constraints, rare sweets were not usually put on display, and at that moment someone's hand extended a bag, offering to accept it for now. The young master clapped his hands and a servant entered the room with a tray. He then asked if the desserts needed slicing, to which he was told that the desserts had already been divided, after which the table was quickly set. An elegant fruit tartlet appeared before them, and Alan admired its beauty, while the small figure next to him thought it was the perfect gift that Akira had recommended, and was delighted that it was indeed to his liking. Zine noticed that one of the table members was feeling unwell, but Albert suggested they have a chilled drink first before continuing the conversation, while Alan nervously suggested that something serious had happened. Ray calmly introduced himself as a first-year student at the academic junior high school, mentioning that he hadn't introduced himself yet. Alan happily confirmed his name as Chris Elisa and mentioned his cousin, while his companion silently noted that the candy was the most delicious he'd ever tasted and that his efforts had not been in vain. Afterward, one of the participants inquired about the other's strange behavior and suggested silence, while the third wondered whether such remarks were appropriate for the heir of a marquis. Aina sternly told Chris not to distort the facts and asked if he was hiding another name, looking at him with a serious, silent gaze. Zine explained that nobles always have both a first and a last name, while commoners only have a first name, which surprised Albert and asked what the second name was that remained hidden. Zine frowned and said that was unlikely, but he also reminded her that Chris did have another full name. The situation became clearer when the stern girl with curled ponytails was introduced as Chris Ilaisu Kainlis, the princess of the kingdom. The girl quietly thought about the royal dynasty, while the fair-haired boy smiled, and the other participant felt a growing sense of uneasiness, wondering why the second princess of Chris Elisa Kainlis was here. In the spacious hall, they explained that Chris's father came from a line closely connected to the Castellano family, possessed magical powers comparable to the head of that line, and was accepted into the royal dynasty through marriage. The young man added that although Chris belonged to a side branch, she had the right to inherit the throne, since she was an awakened one with magical power superior to previous monarchs, which caused deep surprise in the listener. Alan confidently pointed out to Albert that even among commoners there were those with immense magical power, citing Albert himself as an example, which made him visibly gulp. Alan pondered the nature of the awakened, whom the Zane religion considered divine children, while Albert nervously admitted that he had acted rashly in asking Alan to meet Chris. Zine realized that today's events had been orchestrated in advance and concluded that speaking rashly would be risky, since the princess was apparently also one of the reincarnated. Ray thought for a moment, realizing that he couldn't stay on the sidelines when it came to the nobility, and then someone quietly said his name. After a brief pause, Alan attempted to explain himself, but Aina immediately took the initiative, arguing that being an awakened one didn't make anyone special, and that all the accusations against him were based on empty speculation. She then clarified her doubts, reminding them that there were very few incarnate people, and even with outstanding abilities they barely reached the level of the minor nobility, which is why the meaning of what was happening seemed dubious to her. Alan silently agreed, noticing that the children around him were acting much more mature than they looked, and, noticing the girl's tension, he gave her a soft smile, assuring her with a gesture that everything was fine. Then Zine turned to him with a new topic, mentioning that he wanted to talk about his regular purchases of sweets from his counter, emphasizing this with a light, almost friendly gesture over his cup. After that, he offered to support the brigade in return, and Alan thanked him sincerely, although Zine, pausing, noted that he still needed to clarify the details with the captain, to which Alan nodded confidently. Having finished the conversation, Alan politely said goodbye and asked to convey his regards to the commander, while the two at the door silently watched his departure. At this point, Albert noticed that Camilla was barely able to stand on her feet and hurried to her, wondering if she could stand it and if she was too tired. A little later, one of the girls asked her interlocutor to talk privately, and the young man agreed, mentioning that he also wanted to discuss something that was bothering him, addressing her with a respectful title. However, when Alan was left with the princess, he suddenly felt uneasy. Her silent gaze and withdrawn posture created tension, making him wary. Meanwhile, Ina asked Zien to lift his bangs, and he hesitantly complied, while Albert abruptly changed his tone, addressing her with formal respect. Then Ina squealed with delight, recognizing the hero of the popular game in the young man, which left him frankly perplexed. She brushed his bangs aside once more and declared that the resemblance to the game character grew stronger with every glance, while Zien merely blinked in shock, not understanding what was happening. Camilla, catching this wave, suddenly perked up and began talking about her idol from the same game, glad that she was finally asked about it. Then Zien hesitantly asked if he really did resemble the mobile game hero, while Alan flushed and confidently declared that he did not resemble him, but was literally the embodiment of the character. Then one of the young men, beaming with enthusiasm, listed the external details: height, blonde hair, emerald eyes, deep voice, emphasizing the complete coincidence, and the girl listened with a shy smile. After this, the other girl thought about the path she had taken, recalling the events of past years, and in the darkness, a spotlight turned on, illuminating her as she sat down on the floor with a thoughtful look. Yui happily showed off her Ita bag for the upcoming concert, inviting everyone to take a look. The bright accessory immediately became the center of attention. Meanwhile, another participant was worried about spending all her money on the concert and wondered whether she should take on more part-time jobs, fearing she wouldn't have time to prepare for the game event. Yui was lost in her thoughts, and the girl with 2 ponytails easily advised her to put aside her worries about college, gently noting her constant spontaneity. Finally, one girl handed over a box of courage, and the other happily thanked her, after which the other girl again inquired about her meager lunch of sprouts, worried if everything was all right, and in response there was only cheerful laughter about the need to save. The girl recalls how her whole life revolved around her idol, remaining modest but filled with meaning, until one day everything changed abruptly, causing her to wake up in alarm. Alan then reflects on how he gained wealth, power, ability, and attractiveness at the cost of Hakuba-kun's disappearance, while the disheveled girl painfully recalls the past, and how he now lives only in her memory. After this, Albert admits that the situation was difficult, and although he does not fully understand it, he clearly senses through her trembling that she had to endure a lot, while Ina, noticeably confused, assures that now it is all over. Meanwhile, Alan enters the room with a confident step, and Albert assures him with a gesture that he is not Hakuba-kun at all, while another character remarks that the transfer to another world was fate, because thanks to it, he met the ideal idol. After this, Alan, wincing in pain, sits down, but notices how a girl approaches him, and she cheerfully offers to help, which makes him surprised by her sudden change of mood. On the other side of the room, one character is struggling in a box, claiming that the princess shouldn't be there, while another confidently remarks that she can easily quash any rumors, since this is a serious matter. Alan struggles to get out, amazed by the strength that has come from nowhere, while Ina, tightening the knots, sarcastically reminds him that in a soundproof room, he will not be able to call for help or move. Ina then smugly announces that while she had no experience in her previous life, her training is perfect, urging Zien to stop resisting and count the spots on the ceiling while he looks exhausted. After this, the girl suddenly bends over the lying young man, causing him to cry out in surprise, while another character nearby barely stands on his feet, losing his balance. Later, Alan bows his head deeply, expressing his sincere apologies, while Albert recalls losing his temper in front of his own idol and thanks Camilla for her support, imagining what would have happened if he had been left alone. Ina asks Sakakibara if he was transferred or reincarnated, noting that their conversation made it seem like he appeared there out of nowhere. After a comment about how to address him, he sheepishly agrees. The girl explains that in her case, possession occurred. Sakakibara Yui's consciousness passed into this world and intertwined with Chris's personality. Alan wonders if this means he has 2 personalities, and Zien explains that his current personality is a combination of both consciousnesses. After this, the girl confidently declares the birth of the kingdom's strongest otaku, while the other participant is slightly surprised, admitting that this is the first time she has encountered such a case. The young man admits that because of his situation he cannot go out freely, does not get along well with attractive people, and therefore has earned a reputation as a strange introvert, while his interlocutor reacts with a delicate silence. He then reflects that he has lived for 20 years without ever meeting another awakened, and the girl decides that for safety's sake she will not mention Sayoji. Alan rises from his chair, noting that the conversation has been long, but he is glad to meet him, and the other figure quietly presses closer. After this, Zien expresses his intention to send a letter of support and continue communicating as compatriots, which makes her genuinely happy and promises to keep in touch. Alan then nervously admits his own mistakes and quietly repeats his name, while another character muses that Shinto roots are also acceptable. In the finale, Aina comes to and looks around in confusion, trying to figure out where she is, while Alan greets her awakening with a slight smile. The character rubs his eyes and notes that he managed to meet with Lord Ray and the princess, after which the other asks if he feels worse, to which he confidently replies that everything is fine. Then Zine suddenly remembers returning to the room and seeing the princess there with Alan, while Alan himself quietly thinks that she still retained the memory. He then inquires as to what she is talking about, mentioning that the girl lost consciousness shortly after leaving and suggesting that she must have dreamed something strange while she remains hesitant. Alan cautiously admits that he acted too abruptly and tried to confuse his interlocutor, while the other side assures that such a thing could not have happened, and Alan himself mentally wishes that everything was limited to just a dream. The girl with the two high ponytails apologizes, holding out the next part of Yumikoi, and the boy happily accepts the gesture, despite her playful warning not to touch his hair. After this, Aina cheerfully declares that since he feels so well, he will get there himself, but Zeon insists that without urgently reading Yumikoi, he risks losing consciousness again. Zeon, looking thoughtfully to the side, admits that Camilla has become a real salvation for him, and that such gratitude is entirely appropriate, while someone off-camera asks whether he said anything out loud. Kita informs Alan that the captain has summoned him, and after a brief yawn, he reflects on the recent calm, then agrees and politely leaves. Aina frowns and asks a direct question, trying to find out what exactly he did. Alan, studying the document, is surprised by the notes he sees, then notices the names on the torn sheets and slowly realizes that he has stumbled upon something important. Kita calmly shows proof of support from the second princess and the Marquis's family, and Alan, leaning back in his chair with a relaxed smile, admits that too much has happened recently and promises to tell him later. Albert cautiously asks if he interfered when his plan failed, but his interlocutor calmly notes that she is not angry and is even grateful for his participation. Zine asks if Alan knows why they have temporarily suspended their activities as adventurers, and Alan is forced to admit that he doesn't know. They discuss the need to establish connections in the capital, as without them it is impossible to ensure a stable flow of materials and find professional blacksmiths, and without authority this is practically impossible. The girl explains that despite the squad's experience, in the royal capital she is looked down upon simply because of her gender, and there are practically no worthy people among the nobility or merchants. While the young man listens with noticeable concern, the man sitting in the chair asks if they can count on his patronage, and the two girls offer in exchange a share of the income that their squad will earn. A man with a neat mustache says that money is not a problem for him, and that he wants something completely different, causing a woman in a richly embellished outfit to clarify what he means. Then another woman coldly suggests that he is demanding a mistress or choosing one of the attractive participants, and the girl standing next to him sharply calls him a scoundrel, while another calmly says the name Lafin. Kita firmly declares that she does not intend to bargain with either herself or her friends, asks them to forgive her and offers to forget what happened while the others watch in silence. Albert, sitting to the side, grumbles discontentedly about the insolence of women, while the two figures walk away, one of them showing no emotion. Kita quietly notes that similar situations have happened before, but this is the first time such open humiliation has happened, while Albert grimly agrees with her assessment. Another girl calmly reflects on the fact that such behavior is not uncommon among men, while the young man, on the contrary, confirms that such cases are widespread far beyond the capital. Zine suggests that the squad has been through a lot, which is probably what led to its all-female composition, then admits that he grumbles too much while the other woman listens silently. The girl asks the man's name, and the boy replies that he is talking about Alex Barn, the head of the Barn Company, after which another participant adds that although he is not a nobleman, he is connected to an impoverished knightly line. Alan considers the warning regarding transport and acknowledges the need for caution, while a nearby figure advises him to rest due to the dark circles under his eyes, which he accepts with a sigh. A girl with long dark hair meticulously takes notes among piles of paper, and a fair-haired boy notices with alarm that her workload has increased when the other calls for the captain. Then one of the girls happily announces that there are many people who want to meet. Another calls over Alan, who is standing nearby, and the third, in a satisfied tone, notes the opportune moment. Alan explains that his actions have earned them the support of the Marquis and the second princess, to which the girl reacts with genuine shock, then tries to comprehend the situation, while he awkwardly admits that they simply liked some of his things. Aina asks Kita to take care of the guests and listen to everyone while she sorts out the information, and Alan tensely agrees while Albert demands a detailed report later. Alan is stunned and admits he didn't expect such a development, while Kaida calmly explains that Princess Chris rarely appears in public, so their relationship is of great interest. Someone flips through a workbook, noting that once they resume operations, they will need new assistants, and the operations base will be assembled quite quickly. Zine clarifies what exactly his new role entails, suggesting inventory management responsibilities, while his interlocutor suggests a more profitable model, assigning him the squad's personal merchant and selling materials directly, bypassing guild fees. Aina reasons that the current order will have to be maintained for now, since there are not enough people and experience for a complete restructuring. The woman assures Alan that she will ensure sufficient staffing, then asks if he can handle the workload, and he confidently confirms his readiness to work. The character reflects on how unusual it feels to receive gratitude for steps taken to advance one's own career, then recalls hearing something similar while watching a bird outside the window. Aina notes that her priorities have changed and she is focused on the tasks at hand, and Zine understands her position and agrees, recalling the constant support of those around her. Albert asks Aina for help and assures her that there is no need to worry, while the girl reflects on the need to learn from others, then exhales tiredly, considering the day finally complete. The girl with two tails grumbles about people coming every day, but at the same time rejoices at the successful negotiations, after which she notices that someone is still hiding some information despite promises. Another explains that the next management reports are scheduled for next month, and the young man clarifies whether this is a regular meeting, since they have already narrowed down the list of suitable trading companies. Zine listens to Aina's explanation that this will be her first such council, as she had previously been excused from participating due to lack of strength and inability to cope with a large volume of responsibilities, and he responds with attentive understanding. The girl confidently offers to take on the accounting documents, and the young man clarifies whether she can really handle it, noticing the short pause before she admits that she can more or less handle the calculations. Alan admits that he doesn't do the calculations alone and gets help, after which the woman nods thoughtfully, leaves everything to his discretion and calmly leaves, and he quietly confirms his agreement. Meanwhile, Zine, with a theatrical wave of his hand, declares that in such moments the only thing left to do is rely on technology, and then, with a satisfied look, he began to quickly type, admiring the convenience of modern tools. Alan notices suspiciously high expenses in the spreadsheet, and Zine explains that almost half is due to Akira, while showing him how to properly use the electronic payroll and customize it for the squad. Later, Alan returns to his desk contemplating the cost of potions while reminiscing about his regular trips to Japan, where he shares information and helps with gate research. Holding the phone in his hand, he considers whether to listen in on the others' conversation, mentioning the herbs and elixirs they brought, but then he feels someone's eyes on him and assumes the connection is slightly delayed while one of the employees greets Akira. At the secret site of the Seiji Company's Leaf Institute, he is met by Chief Botanist Yoshida, who happily announces that the team has been waiting for this visit for a long time. Albert apologizes for disturbing Alan while he's working, but Alan calmly remarks that the moment is opportune, as he was just preparing a report and immediately begins to explain. Zine describes in detail the mechanism of action of the potions, explaining that they pass through the cell membrane, activate the nucleus, and accelerate tissue regeneration by temporarily replacing damaged areas. After this, Albert asks to put it more simply and then summarizes the meaning by saying that the potion enhances the body's natural healing abilities, which is its essence. The bespectacled researcher adds that the genetic structure of the grasses is almost indistinguishable from that of terrestrial plants, which arouses further interest among the entire group. Alan suggests that the natural power of plants is not enough to influence a person, and Albert confirms that the effect is only possible thanks to an unknown energy, which in another world is called magic. When asked about his condition, Alan replies that everything is fine, although he himself recalls that Seiji and Sakakibara are significantly superior to him physically, and admits that he suspected this even based on the results of the medical examination. Zine is then surprised to hear Albert report the successful cultivation of some medicinal herbs, albeit in a weakened form, and admits that the mystery of their movement through the gate is not fully understood. The team discusses how plants suffer from a lack of mana, and while developing a method to properly breed them would be a Nobel Prize contender, most specimens still fail to withstand the conditions or are not recognized correctly at all. Albert is interested in the reverse situation, and Alan discusses how difficult the road ahead is, noting that even in its homeworld, the plant was found only in a few remote locations. The bespectacled youth suggests that earth plants might be able to retain mana and wonders about the possible effects, before turning to Tsukamoto for his opinion, only to be met with a surprised look. A girl in a lab coat leads the group further down the corridor, announcing that they have arrived and suggesting they go deeper, with the two researchers following behind. Alan and Aina pause by the shelves of pots as she explains that they are ordinary earth plants, selected for their genetic similarity to otherworldly herbs. Albert asks Alan to try channeling some magical energy into one of the plants, assuring him that even a small amount of effort is enough, and Alan, although hesitant due to his lack of experience, still decides to try. Albert and the researcher discuss the problem, which is impossible to see with the naked eye, and he sighs sympathetically, while Alan senses a subtle response within the plant structure and patiently awaits the analysis results. Afterward, the woman thanks him for his assistance and promises to report the results later, and he calmly confirms his willingness to wait. Meanwhile, Zian explains that, like elixirs, mana can gradually dissipate, so he'll probably have to ask Alan to use magic a few more times. He then hesitantly mentions that he'd also like to clarify something. A little later, someone's hand flips through the financial report and notes that everything looks acceptable overall, but Alan still doubts whether regular meetings really require such strictness, while Ina watches him closely without saying a word. To diffuse the tension, he gently assures her that he will take charge of the situation if anything goes wrong, while she, slightly confused, admits that this is the first time she has participated in such meetings and is worried about not knowing the rules. A little later, the girl with two tails asks about the contents of the bag the young man is carrying, and he replies that he will tell her everything later, leaving the details for the right moment. Then Albert, visibly nervous, admits that he tried to act within the framework of his experience, but Ina looks at him sternly, asking if he ever gave a truly complete explanation, despite his loud statements. Zine intervenes, reassuring her that he's already thought out the team's overall strategy and that she needn't worry. Hearing this, the girl pauses, then asks what exactly he meant when he said she'd changed recently. At this time, Lafon reports that reconnaissance is complete, information about the nearest dungeons has been collected, and several detachments are planning to set out in 2 days, which creates a sense of growing movement. Nana adds animatedly that since Alan's arrival, applications have started coming in from other male adventurers wanting to join them, which surprises the entire team. Alan reflects with a touch of sadness on those rejected for their lack of skills, while one of the girls carefully mentions someone she would like to recommend, without overshadowing the overall problem. Then a girl in monastic-like clothing explains that she is talking about a representative of the Pianyishan knightly family who has high healing potential, and someone asks who he is. Another participant seriously considers the possibility that 6 months of training could turn him into a truly valuable support mage, and receives a thrillingly joyful confirmation, although she still doubts whether the others are convinced. Then one of the girls confidently declares that only she saw the candidate's true abilities, and if they want to get him, they need to act now. The dark-haired woman clarifies that the agreements will be kept and asks to see the matter through to the end, and the monastic mage happily agrees while the fair-haired youth ponders the composition of the future team of sorcerers. After this, the girl with two tails smiles approvingly, the other awkwardly encourages her to hold on, and both discuss how, after yesterday's incident, they need to secure the blacksmiths and complete the supply negotiations. She then nervously tries to add more details, but another participant gently asks if there is any more important information, and Alan, watching the scene, recalls his own stressful days at work and recognizes the familiar features of an overworked employee. He summarizes the results of the team's expense audit and points out the problem with maintaining potion stocks, and then asks Ina to distribute the prepared materials, to which she, albeit hesitantly, nevertheless nods. After examining the sample, the girl notices the advantages of the new container system. Its high strength and compactness make it much more convenient than glass bottles, and she understands that this was achieved thanks to Alan's useful connections. In response, Zine points out a key advantage: a shelf life of up to a month thanks to special processing, which causes pure surprise among listeners accustomed to a much shorter shelf life. But Albert is dubious, claiming that such remedies typically last no more than a week, while Alan vehemently objects, insisting that such claims are nonsense and questioning whether the developer's author can be trusted. At this point, Ina gently puts an end to the argument, acknowledging her doubts, but emphasizing her confidence that the man wouldn't lie so blatantly. The rose in her hands flared with a soft light, and the girl was wondering how much now depended on this experiment when a cautious question was heard nearby about whether this was really an ordinary flower in front of them. The woman then explained that this particular species best retained particles of magic, resembling medicinal herbs in structure, while most plants turned out to be toxic, which forced everyone to treat them with caution. Meanwhile, the man with the collected tail asked the young man to move and grow these samples on the other side of the gate, and he, after a short thought, agreed, understanding the significance of the request. Afterwards, Albert confirmed that they would prepare additional sections in case of an error, and Alan thought about how Saoji had forbidden him to report ahead of time, remembering how the red roses had turned violet-blue under his influence. He then decided to try using the flower as a replacement for herbs, wondering if the result would speed up the full transfer of magic, and felt responsible for the sudden mutation. A moment later, May asked if she needed to be taught how to make potions, and the woman invited her in, noting that she had heard of her abilities, which sparked genuine interest in the girl. Then she admitted that she would not be able to teach him fully, since the plant was non-standard, which made the young man noticeably tense, and May was surprised, assuming that it was a pseudo-plant with unknown properties. Alan examined the strange sprout carefully, admitting that he had never seen such a thing before, and the girl with the scythe smiled, saying that he always brought unusual things, which made him laugh awkwardly. He then asked her how familiar she was with potion making, and she admitted only basic knowledge, and he suggested experimenting, understanding the possible risks of failure. After that, she began to explain the basics. 4 colors of potions, each in 3 gradations, 12 types in total, promising to explain everything as simply as possible. She described the stages of the healing direction, from red to green, noting that green only covers minor wounds, and the young man was surprised when he heard that in their unit they only use up to the blue level. Meanwhile, the mixture was boiling in the cauldron, and the girl explained that purple compounds require rare ingredients from hazardous areas, which is why such elixirs almost never make it to the market, and the version they created is considered the highest level available to people. She then added that the Red series only exists in legends and disappeared from the world map more than 10 years ago, which caused the audience to look at each other warily. She spoke of a vessel called the Blood of God, which had a resurrection effect at rank 1, noting that even lower ranks were capable of saving one from fatal injuries, although no one had ever seen a red specimen. Alan checked on her condition when she started coughing, and she explained that such relics were found only in ancient deep dungeons, long since plundered, and the chance of finding them again was extremely small. At this point, she removed the lid from the cauldron, announcing that the brewing was complete, and asked if it was truly purple, and the young man, struck by its rarity, noted that such a sample was incredibly valuable on the black market, although he himself had never created anything like it. The girl holding the flask noted with a grin that whoever prepared it was surprisingly devoid of the usual sense of normalcy, and the guy with the scarf admitted that he expected to see only a blue level, when another participant emphasized that even the cultivation of medicinal herbs artificially has long been recognized as impossible. Kita immediately rejected the idea of fastling such a valuable item to the guild, reminding them that such a move would ruin their reputation, although she admitted that throwing it away was also not an option. The girl then suggested using both containers next month to test the source's honesty, and Alan agreed, relieved that the dispute had been resolved. He then stretched, quietly thinking that the potion maintenance costs should now be stabilized, and decided to thank Yoshida and the research team later as the door gently closed beside him. Zine thoughtfully asked what exactly public reputation meant, and Aina explained that outside observers might think their group was incapable of conducting business without the support of the guild. Alan was worried that not only other merchants but also the guild's own employees would be targeted, and Albert suggested exploring the capital's black market, reminding them that visiting it was not considered a violation of the law. The girl sternly reminded her companion that they were not required to use this god's name, warning that the usual irritation with such matters would easily destroy the desire to continue, and the guy noted with confusion how mature she looked, despite her young age. Aina was surprised to learn that she too was to join, but the other girl insisted on keeping the secret and emphasized the need for Aina to accompany him. Kaida felt her frustration mounting as Alan explained that one successful deal could net 5 million, and the lack of someone to lead the negotiations put him in a corner. Alan handed the task over to Aina, and she agreed without further ado, but a second later he remembered the 5 potions obtained from roses and tried to clarify, but then waved it off, not wanting to pursue the topic further. The potion was quietly simmering on the stove, and Alan, fighting off sleep, was thinking about how the magic rose was worth a huge amount of money, but he was forced to brew the remaining infusions himself, knowing almost nothing about the process. He checked with himself whether he had done the right thing by adding all the remaining roses to the brew, then decided that there was no choice, since he needed to finish everything before tomorrow's trip to the black market. Alan picked up the bottle and looked at the liquid intently, trying to determine whether it had actually turned red, while Albert, observing the sample, was doubtful, thinking the hue was more of a reddish-violet and suspecting the experiment had failed. Then one of them noted a strange tingling sensation coming from the test tube and admitted that he did not understand the nature of such an effect, which only increased the general anxiety. Alan pondered the changed color of the water, realizing it was far from purple and fearing the consequences if it were discovered, while those around him recalled the lack of treatment systems and the possible threat of exposure. He declared that the only last resort was to dispose of the substance outside the city, and their footsteps soon disappeared into the deserted land. The area before them was a lifeless landscape, and Alan, sensing the tense silence, insisted on quickly burying the item and leaving, despite the difficulties of the soil. A lone figure stood motionless before the shining rise of light between the stone ledges. Then the man uttered the phrase about the orbital elevator in surprise, hardly believing his own eyes. Alan quickly hid the bottle in the sand and hurried away, convinced that the place was definitely dangerous, and urged the others to choose another direction. The scene then changed again, showing Alan looking distracted and worried as someone inquired about his condition, and he responded with only an uncertain sound. Albert rubbed his tired eyes, admitting that he hadn't gotten enough sleep, and Ina asked whether the cause of his insomnia was excessive nervousness before the upcoming tasks. Alan looked up in surprise, trying to figure out who was standing in front of him, and heard a half-joking remark about his own drowsiness, after which the interlocutor softened, explaining her appearance and reminding him that she too was an adventurer. Meanwhile, the twin-tailed girl cast a hard glance at the young man, noting that the capital's black market was safe enough, but it was his connections with the princess and his ability to brew purple potions that made him too conspicuous. Albert admitted his mistake and suggested that he prepare better next time, and Ina confidently declared that she would protect him as expected, despite his complete lack of combat experience. The girl urged him to go faster, otherwise they would be late, and the young man thought that she probably decided that he had not slept because of nerves, after which he pulled himself together and tried to fully get into the working rhythm. Alan, standing at the archway, briefly confirmed that he was already following her, watching as the girl with two tails confidently walked forward towards the bright daylight. In the bustling underground market of the royal capital, a young man confidently announced the completion of his preparations, but was instantly taken aback when he saw that only his ID and a lone purple potion remained on the shelf. Everything else had disappeared. The two discussed the surprisingly civilized nature of the market, recalling how the captain had assured them that visiting was legal, while two hooded figures in the background cheerfully distributed fresh potions. Alan clarified the meaning of what he had said, and Ina patiently explained that the market, although legal, was not subject to the state or the guild, warning him to remain vigilant. Ina continued, explaining that selling items above the guild price was allowed, but the buyers here were just as desperate, and even if someone was cheated, it wouldn't be considered a crime. Albert noted that active trading would soon begin, and Alan thoughtfully admitted that he himself did not look like a man capable of bargaining, and Albert involuntarily agreed with this conclusion. As the doors opened, the crowd surged forward, shouting calls for people to stay calm, while amid the chaos, two calm observers silently studied the scene. Alan and Albert both noted the alarming density of visitors, and while Albert felt uneasy, Alan only hoped to leave early while Albert wondered about the possibility of rare artifacts appearing. Zine tried to verify the authenticity of the certificate, but the man in the hat skeptically remarked that such documents were easy to forge, to which Zine only insisted more firmly on their true origin. Zine also doubted the authenticity of the blue potion, attributing it to the usual caution of buyers, while Albert offered a price of $1.5 million for the first rank, which Zine considered unrealistic. The irritated man ordered the young man to shut up and leave if he was not going to buy, and the young man himself sharply accused the girl standing next to him of being silent, while the other observer remained silent. Ina sharply put the man in his place, ordering him not to interfere with their trade, and he was indignant that such a young girl dared to speak to him in such a tone. Alan grabbed the man's wrist, clearly indicating the line of what was permissible, and he angrily declared that he was now talking to a woman and did not have to restrain himself. Albert watched with alarm as Ina sent her opponent flying with a swift blow, then called out to her, amazed at how seriously she took the threat. The girl sat with her face in her hands, upset by yet another remark to be more careful. But the young man calmly assured her that in such situations, it was worth letting him resolve conflicts himself. Albert, entering inside, noticed the guild ID, then sighed wearily and decided to leave the situation as is, despite the high demand for potions and the lack of real buyers. The young man with the sword calmly announced his desire to purchase the goods, which caused surprise among the two observers standing nearby, who did not expect such a quick transaction. Albert asked how the man had obtained the rare item and was told it was all the result of personal connections, while a request for a possible re-delivery was met with a vague response. Maxwell handed over the card and noted that he would like to purchase more when new stock appeared, and the seller ordered the goods to be delivered to the guild immediately, assuring that they would buy it at any price. Albert looked at the terms of the deal with doubt, fearing unfair advantage, while Alan calmly assured him that the situation was completely normal, reminding him how much the price of the potion could change during monster raids and any military clashes. Zine listened silently, gradually realizing that purple potions only appeared once a month, and many adventurers often gave up on continuing their expeditions simply because they were unable to heal their own wounds. The discussion touched on the difficulty of regenerative healing, which is only available to rare healers, whose services are practically unavailable to the average adventurer, so most are forced to rely solely on potions. Albert, keeping his cool, remarked that he was ready to pay any amount if money could really turn the impossible into possible. Zine thoughtfully acknowledged that such a resource could save the lives of his comrades, after which Kita recalled the case of one of her acquaintances losing a finger and explained the need to re-excise the affected tissue before using the potion, which left Zine clearly confused. Albert asked if anything special was happening today, and Zihan explained that they were just lucky, all the people were headed that way. Alan, feeling uneasy, promised to keep as much stock as possible to prevent such situations from happening again. Zine was surprised to hear that an elven slave had just been delivered to the market, although he admitted that he himself knew almost nothing about such matters. Alan stifled a yawn, and Ina asked worriedly about his condition, but the young man dismissed what was happening as a normal social outing and decided to look around a bit while the continuous noise of the crowd was heard around him. Another young man reflected on the structure of the local system of slavery, which turned out to be much less cruel than he had expected, and the second observer listened quietly to his reasoning. Albert clarified the purpose of the paper in Alan's hands, and Alan explained that it contained payment terms, demands, and a description of the future work. Albert was then stunned to learn that slaves were paid and could choose their occupation, and that local slavery was not associated with debt or crime. The girl explained that the contract is concluded only by mutual consent, and once signed, the employer has the right to use restrictive magic exclusively to maintain confidentiality and behavior. She then listed 3 levels of labor categories with varying pay. Alan and his interlocutor discussed the harsh working conditions and rarity of elven slaves, and then he thought for a moment and remarked that he wouldn't be surprised if their monthly earnings reached 10 million. The crowd around him buzzed with incomprehension, not believing that the elf had actually agreed to come here of his own free will, causing waves of distrust and whispers. The dense stream of people moved forward, and one of the characters warned them to stay close so as not to get lost, while another tried to see what was happening through the heads, surprised at how easily the crowd carried him away. Soon arrows flew over the people, and the girl with 2 tails, noticing this, quickly made her way forward. The group found themselves squeezed into a tight ring of people, one complaining of pain from the jolts, and another surprised at how far they had already been dragged before someone's excited voice joyfully announced the long-awaited find. The elf with wavy hair sat calmly on the dais and read a book, completely immersed in the text, her face still and collected. Alan noted her sophistication with admiration, and Ina watched him with interest until the young man's gaze fell on the sheet of paper describing the conditions, which he began to study. He was surprised to find that the preferences did not include any requirements for salary, length of service, or nature of work, which he found suspicious. Ina carefully read the note at the bottom of the page, which stated that 1 red potion of rank 3 or higher was a mandatory requirement. She gripped the paper a little tighter, focusing entirely on this detail. The two walked in silence, discussing the strange story of the elf's companion, gravely wounded or mortally ill, for whom she had traveled across the country. One of the companions admitted it was touching, but doubted whether such a thing was truly worth the red potion. Zine listened thoughtfully as the other explained that the elf made her conditions not for profit, but to ensure that others were treated with dignity. The stone crunched underfoot, and one of them noted that, in terms of sheer value, the red potion itself was worth more than any contract. Alan, clutching his head, insisted that the issue was not the price but the essence of the situation, while Albert, with heavy seriousness, reflected that the girl might be just a victim of circumstances and worried about her fate. Zine silently admitted that he might be able to make such a potion, and the thought had barely entered his mind when Alan stopped abruptly, explaining that he was simply lost in thought. Ina immediately asked what was troubling him. Ina fell silent, and Zine looked away in embarrassment, denying any interest in the elf when she asked her direct question. The girl warned the young man that excessive compassion for everyone he met would sooner or later exhaust him if he did not learn to separate the important from the unimportant. Alan heard her words while another participant in the conversation advised him to direct his powers only to those he was truly capable of saving. The girl with ponytail suggested that they hurry home, although her companion grumbled that she had expressed herself too harshly, but still admitted that sometimes she says surprisingly correct things. Alan clenched his fist, realizing Ina had meant something else, and felt a jolt of action. Albert, meanwhile, saw this as a chance to find workers capable of keeping secrets and performing delicate tasks like repackaging or sorting. Standing alone in the moonlight, the man reflected that he rarely asked for help, but since there was even a small chance, he had to try. The doorbell of a traditional house rang. The old man opened the door and recognized Alan, greeting him as if he were family. The young man apologized for the sudden visit, and the owner gestured for him to enter. An elderly man seated his guest for dinner, showing off fresh eggplants, and one of the boys looked embarrassed, causing his companion to be surprised by the sudden formality. A young man with disheveled hair hesitantly began to ask Gengishi-san for a favor. A traditional house appeared in the frame, and the man asked if his interlocutor wanted to occupy the plot of land, receiving in response a polite bow and a request to allocate it for just a month. Zine replied that he had no objection, though he warned that the place was a wasteland. Alan accepted this with gratitude, and the small figure next to him immediately suggested a celebratory dinner. Alan looked around the field he had managed to obtain and felt a sense of unease, wondering if he would be able to handle farming for the first time in his life, when someone called out to him. Albert saw the tractor approaching and was surprised, and the young man apologized for the delay and confidently introduced himself as a reliable assistant. Kaida explained that he borrowed the tractor from his parents because they were farmers, and the second young man thanked him and asked about the equipment. The dense growth before them prompted a comment about its impressiveness, and then Alan revealed his plan to plant 4,000 roses the following week and harvest them within a month, although so far he only had small shoots. The young man in the cap silently assessed the scope of the work, acknowledging that the task was not easy. He then offered to show his companion something important, surprising the fair-haired youth, who confidently declared that they could handle it. When one of them pointed out the difference in the weeds between the forest strip and the field, the other, having taken a closer look, agreed that the transition was indeed noticeable. Albert analyzed the situation, while Zine explained that there were no particularly problematic plants nearby, suggesting recent land use. He showed off both cedar shoots and sasu plants that actively reproduce after soil cultivation. Albert pointed out that there were no guarantees in farming, suggesting they just get started. Alan nodded, and the two of them began preparing their equipment and heading out into the field. The work began to boil. One mowed the grass, another carried baskets. Later, the truck was filled with fresh cuttings, and nearby a tractor evenly furrowed the ground. When the day was over, Albert declared the program complete, and Alan ran his hand over his chin, trying to comprehend the extent of what had been accomplished. Albert joked that Alan worked like a living tractor, to which Alan thoughtfully replied that it was hard to believe how much they had accomplished in one day, all thanks to the experience of a farmer's son. Later, they sat down at the edge of the forest, and Albert admitted that he was not sure that what was happening was correct, while Alan recalled Genji-san's joy and the remark that the wasteland had clearly been recently cultivated by someone. The blonde-haired guy explained that the land was finally being used for its intended purpose, and his friend clarified what exactly he meant. The two of them sat in the field, discussing Genji-san's inheritance and the difficulties the farm was facing, after which one decided to take a day off, and the other supported the idea of SAS starting over with renewed vigor. Alan, seeing the endless list of tasks, felt growing tired, and Zine, beaming with optimism, assured him that he would cope with the rest himself and would not burden him further. With the tractor working in the distance, one of the men apologized and promised to cover the fuel and tool costs, as they could only help for a few days. Meanwhile, the two quietly discussed why the other was acting distant. He merely smiled warmly, explaining that he was helping out of genuine desire, considering them friends. The other listened, surprised by such simplicity. Alan cautiously asked his interlocutor if he had never heard the word friends before, and he admitted with slight timidity that yes, they were friends. Someone apologized for having met such a person for the first time in Japan, while another noted that Alan could be stubborn, but when it came to friends, he would do even more. The young man, animated, said that he would like to ask for a favor, and his companion patiently asked what it was about. They discussed the spread of anime culture and the rarity of fans like those of Yu McCoy, while one of them wondered if he was the only one who hadn't yet seen the benefit of it. Alan stood in the garden, celebrating his successful completion of the planting. The blonde man apologized for the trouble and acknowledged the many people who had helped them with the endeavor. Akira, who entered, said that if he had been warned in advance, he would have prepared the soil and everything else, but the two only apologized and noted that the prepared roses themselves were a huge help. Finally, one of the participants asked if they had any extra red potions and expressed gratitude for any support, while another replied that everything depended on the results and handed him a bottle. Kita hesitantly approached Alan, who was sitting on a bench, and, gathering her courage, outlined her request, and he calmly inquired about its essence. She explained that she had tried to inform the Leaf Institute about the magical roses, but Sayoji had stopped her, and now she wanted to understand what exactly he was planning. Alan listened silently, intently. He noted that he did not require a mandatory answer from Albert, and was ready to discuss everything later, since the question was inevitable anyway. Having settled himself more comfortably on the bench, he began to explain the structure of the Sayoji family, the main and collateral branches, hinting that his interlocutor had probably already guessed the layout. Aina assumed there was bad blood between the branches, but quickly learned that Ryugen and Ukai, the heads of the rival lines, were technically close cousins. Ran the same corporation together. Then the bodyguard that Ryugen met was mentioned. He turned out to be a spy for a side branch who disappeared after leaking information. Zine noted that, in essence, the two branches remain rivals despite jointly managing the business, and Camilla clarified that the differences lie only in origin, direct line versus lateral, with no difference in wealth or influence. The woman explained that Ryugen oversees areas related to automobiles, real estate, and IT, while Aokai oversees high-tech areas, including genetics, and their responsibilities are divided among areas. Alan mentioned that the Leaf Institute was under Ukai's control, making the influence of the side branch particularly problematic for the situation, and the woman considered what she had said. Zine, taking a sip, admitted to mixed feelings, as he was indebted to the Institute, but Camilla calmly noted that what had happened would certainly intensify the struggle for control of interworld projects. Aina clarified that this was an industry related to materials and magic from another world, with some areas valued at hundreds of billions, and after some thought she agreed with this assessment. Alan felt the weight of responsibility, knowing that the supplies were essentially his alone, but he remembered how Ryugen and his people had deliberately sidelined him from the political fray, and sighed, admitting that perhaps it was for the best. He asked what exactly they wanted to show him, and Kita led him to the place where magical roses are grown. Aina remarked that it was easier to control leaks in the closed community of the village, which made Alan tense up a little, and she immediately softened her tone, hinting that she was only teasing him. Zine calmly announced his intention to create a full-fledged base for rose cultivation in Japan and presented a detailed plan. Alan acknowledged that potions were in demand on the black market and could generate a steady income, but Albert reminded her that preparations would take months and that the elf's presence would need to be concealed, to which the girl agreed. At the library, the girl harshly stopped any further questioning, and the guy remarked that he had learned about the Sayoji family from Akira, after which she calmly admitted this information. Kita quietly admitted that all she could do now was trust her father, and Albert asked her to look at something important. They examined the rose and concluded that it did not have magical properties, and the young man noted that magical nourishment alone was clearly not enough to cause mutation. The girl with the ribbon in her hair examined the plant carefully, noting that if growing herbs capable of creating purple potions were easy, they would never have become such a rarity. She considered the possibility that the key might lie in its unique magical properties, and as she held the bud closer, she acknowledged her own uncertainty. Alan, sensing a discrepancy, explained that in normal cases, transferred or reincarnated people receive a skill and an element, while Albert admitted the lack of any useful magic. The dark-haired girl tried to figure out whether what was happening was related to the skill or an undisclosed attribute, and the fair-haired boy admitted that this was the first time he had heard of such a thing. Alan told Kita he would inform her of any details he discovered, and she agreed. Afterward, he again considered the capabilities of the Moon Gate, which allowed even living plants to pass through, and the scale of that power. He glanced to the side, as if trying to grasp the essence of the unknown, and admitted to himself that there was still too much he did not understand. Meanwhile, Zine decided to start preparing for tasks beyond the red potion, believing it was time to move on. He felt anxious about how smoothly everything would go, but when the woman opened the door and politely invited him inside, he thanked her and followed her into the room. Albert thanked Alan for his visit despite his busy schedule, and he replied that it was no problem, after which he was asked about the reason for his visit. In another corner of the house, a girl was thinking out loud that an elven slave sounded like a plot from a light novel, and the young man, embarrassed, admitted that he only wanted a reliable employee, but couldn't pass her by. Alan stood at a distance, swallowing nervously, while Aina calmly noted that she had expected this and added that she had a much more important question. She calmly but seriously asked him not to avoid her so openly, hinting that such behavior would only turn her on even more. He hesitated but agreed that she meant no harm. Alan confirmed that he had prepared the promised souvenir, and she confirmed his confidence, thanked him, and apologized for the disturbance, while he reflected on the support he constantly felt nearby. Aina easily opened the box containing the gift, saying that she would share it with her family, and Alan watched her with genuine surprise. Zine admired the frost effect that appeared and asked if it was truly ice magic, and the girl explained that its power was suitable for both storage and attack, calling it convenient. Zine admitted that this was impressive. Albert clarified the meaning of her words, and she calmly explained that this was not a spell, but only a partial removal of magical suppression, demonstrating this with a light crack of her fingers. Zine noticed that the tea was slightly cold, and Alan acknowledged the incredible power of hers but sighed, explaining that this happened when he lost concentration. After a short pause, Alan announced that he had become distracted, and Albert confirmed his desire to talk about the elven girl, then spoke of his intention to prepare a house in the capital, which surprised his interlocutor. The girl cautiously asked if the elf could live in the brigade's house, but the young man explained that everything was more complicated and hinted that she seemed to have a companion. The girl with the scythe remembered that slavery was banned in a number of countries, and the knight warned that having a slave could cause problems if the brigade went beyond the kingdom's borders. Alan explained his desire to keep the secret, avoiding risk and possible execution, and Ina acknowledged the wisdom of his position. Meanwhile, a stunned Kita was already imagining the worst possible outcome, that someone would actually call the girl a vile elven slave. Alan touched his cup of tea, thinking that they needed to find a safer place, since danger in the near future was almost inevitable, and Albert tried to understand, with restraint, what kind of threats they were talking about. Zine reminded them that those who had been unable to obtain the elf due to the lack of the red potion might try to kidnap her if they learned her location, and a fleeting shadow of anxiety fell over the conversation. He suggested setting up a powerful magical barrier, albeit an expensive one, and Alan agreed, while simultaneously thinking through detection and counterattack options. Camilla admitted that she would have liked to pay for the house herself, but was afraid of misinterpretations, and then quietly added that she had one more request. Zine, standing at a distance, expressed a desire to hide under a different name from strangers and even from the brigade, and his interlocutor understood his state, considering this an inevitable necessity. The girl confidently declared that the royal family was above the law, and then thanked Shinjo for his help, while the boy on the edge still doubted the acceptability of what was happening. Albert promised to issue a trade card along with the registration and offered to use it when necessary, and Alan accepted this with sincere gratitude. He thanked the girl for her time, and she bowed with polite gentleness, glad that she had been able to help, after which he promised to return the favor with kindness. The girl with the side braid, enchanted by the almost divine smile, quietly left the room, closing the door with a barely audible slam. Zine, stopping at the passage, said seriously that now the most important part begins, preparing to move on to the next stage. A dull thud echoed over the fence with the no entry sign, and the sharp creaking of the security camera only emphasized the severity of the regime. The man watched the noise coming from the small building through binoculars while Alan, with a nervous chuckle, admitted that it had all gone too far, and the calm woman explained that such protection was merely a security measure. The girl with wavy hair firmly stated that she could not allow information to leak, although another voice in the shadows noted that the situation seemed extreme, but at the same time natural. Albert explained to Alan that revealing the existence of another world was inevitable and for his own protection, and Alan reluctantly agreed, still unsure whether the entire settlement was frightened at the moment, but the calm girl assured him that it would not create any problems. Camilla said she explained to residents the existence of a special cultivation technology and closed access, citing a joint project with Sayoji's group, which surprised others. Zine considered their reactions and realized that despite the shock, people had accepted the situation, and he himself would soon have to give a detailed explanation. The roses were growing noticeably better, and everything should be ready for harvest in a week, although the result depended solely on the amount of magic invested, as one observer noted. Alan nodded, confirming his understanding, while Albert explained that he had doubled the strength and frequency of the magical saturation and believed that it was enough. He asked permission to watch while Alan channeled the magic, and Alan confirmed his willingness, beginning the process with even concentration. The girl noticed a faint light appear among the flowers, and the boy honestly admitted that he himself did not understand the nature of what was happening, but the fact that a new glow had appeared was undeniable. Alan wondered if magical power could be detected through sample analysis, and Ina admitted it was beyond her comprehension, suggesting he contact the researchers while photographers bustled about nearby, preparing their equipment. The girl with the side braid quietly noted to herself that she hadn't said anything unnecessary, although she realized that Sayoji's group was genuinely proud of its scientists, despite all the difficulties. Under a clear sky, a proposal was made to entrust the management of the plantation to their side, and another interlocutor gratefully promised to be there by the time the harvest was harvested. The girl with two ponytails approached the young man with the papers, finally finding him, and handed him the letter with noticeable relief. Albert asked who had sent the message, and Ina explained that it was a letter from a real estate agency, carefully handing over the envelope. Zine read the lines about the unexpectedly early purchase of a house, and Ina reacted with slight shock when she heard his intention to move and register the property in the near future. He added that there was no particular reason, he simply decided to take advantage of the opportune moment, hinting that it could help the new member, but the girl asked in surprise if it was all too hasty. One of those present sighed and was amazed by the scale of his funds, and the young man simply calmly noted that a client remains a client, while the other gasped, not imagining such a turn of events. She was asked if he had informed the captain, and he admitted that he intended to do so after the purchase, since many details were still unclear. Soon a woman appeared and apologized for the wait, demonstrating the object, and the young man looked with delight at the house of his temporary dreams, beaming with joy. Albert opened the door, inviting everyone inside, and explained that in addition to the living room, there were 7 additional rooms, including a study, and that the building itself was distinguished by excellent lighting and ventilation. Alan stepped into the dazzlingly clean house and thought that it looked almost new, quite befitting the residence chosen by the princess, quietly expressing surprise. They examined the bathhouse, and the young man asked with bewilderment what its purpose was, while the girl confidently explained its structure and the rules of use. The woman showed a stone infused with magic to supply water, and then another to heat it, and someone thanked Sakakibara, genuinely happy with the system. Zine entered the next room, amazed at the level of development of local amenities, and thought about the toilet, holding a wet rag in his hands. Alan tiptoed out, expecting too much, and noticed someone hesitantly call out to him with a respectful voice. Albert clarified that there was indeed nothing inside, although everything had been thoroughly checked, and Alan sheepishly admitted that he had simply wanted to know the capacity, feeling as if he were inspecting a hotel. When asked about his impressions, he calmly replied that he had nothing to add and was ready to move on to the contract, after which his interlocutor promised to prepare the documents. Later, he sank into a chair, exhaling heavily, remembering that the red potion was not ready yet, although he had already come so far in this new story. Zine looked around the spacious room, feeling a slight anxiety at the thought that if he failed, he would have to live here alone, and the silence of the house only intensified this feeling. Alan looked up at the sky, deciding that worrying was pointless now and reminding himself that all he had to do was wait until next week. He looked thoughtfully out the window at the lonely figure of the girl in the next room, wondering who exactly she was trying to fight for.